There are moments in life that cannot be explained with simple words. Moments where everything around you looks normal and yet something inside you feels completely broken. And you try to move forward like everything is fine. You wake up. You go to work. You talk to people. You laugh at the right times. But deep inside there is a quiet emptiness that never truly leaves you. And maybe you have learned to live with it. Maybe you have convinced yourself that this is just part of life. That everyone feels this way. But deep down you know that what you are feeling is more than just a passing emotion. It is something deeper. Something that touches your soul. Something that whispers to you in the quiet moments when everything slows down and you can no longer distract yourself from what is really happening inside. And in those moments the questions begin. Questions that you cannot ignore. Questions like, why do I feel this way? Why does everything feel incomplete even when I have what I thought I needed? Why do I feel alone even when I am surrounded by people? And maybe you have tried to answer those questions in different ways. Maybe you have tried to fill that emptiness with success, with relationships, with distractions, with achievements, with anything that could take your mind off that feeling. But no matter what you do, it always comes back. That quiet ache. That sense that something is missing. And the more you try to ignore it, the stronger it becomes. Until one day you begin to realize that this is not something you can fix on your own. That this emptiness is not just a problem to solve but a signal pointing to something deeper. Something that the world cannot give you. Something that cannot be bought, achieved, or earned. And maybe this is the moment where everything begins to change. Because what if this emptiness is not there to destroy you, but to lead you somewhere? What if it is not a weakness but an invitation? An invitation to discover something greater than yourself. Something eternal. Something that your soul has been searching for all along. And that something is not a thing. It is a person. It is Jesus Christ. Because the truth that many people overlook is that the human heart was never meant to be satisfied by temporary things. It was created for something eternal. And when we try to fill that eternal space with temporary things, we will always feel empty. No matter how much we have. No matter how successful we become. No matter how much we achieve. Because the problem is not what we have or what we lack. The problem is what we are trying to fill our soul with. And Jesus is the only one who can truly fill that space. Not because of religion. Not because of tradition. But because he is the source of life itself. And there are countless people who have experienced this. People who had everything the world could offer and still felt empty. Until they encountered him. And everything began to change. Not always instantly, not always dramatically, but deeply, truly, in a way that nothing else could ever replace. And maybe you are listening to this right now and you are not sure what you believe. Maybe you have doubts. Maybe you have questions. Maybe you are not even sure if God is real. And that is okay. Because faith does not begin with certainty. It begins with honesty. It begins with a willingness to ask. A willingness to seek. A willingness to be open to something beyond what you can see. And maybe all it takes is one simple moment. One honest thought. One quiet prayer. Not a perfect prayer. Not a religious prayer. Just something real. Something from your heart. Something like, Jesus, if you are real, I need you. And that moment. That simple moment. Could be the beginning of something you never expected. Because Jesus does not wait for you to be perfect. He does not wait for you to have everything figured out. He meets you exactly where you are. In your confusion. In your doubt. In your brokenness. And he begins to work from there. Not by forcing you. Not by overwhelming you. But by gently drawing you closer. By slowly revealing himself in ways that you can understand. In ways that speak directly to your heart. And over time something begins to shift. The emptiness that once felt overwhelming begins to lose its power. The questions that once felt heavy begin to find meaning. The loneliness that once consumed you begins to fade. And in its place something new begins to grow. Something that feels different from anything you have ever experienced before. A sense of peace that does not depend on your circumstances. A sense of purpose that goes beyond your situation. A sense of being known and loved in a way that you cannot fully explain but you can clearly feel. And that is what happens when the fire of Christ begins to burn within you. It does not destroy you. It restores you. It does not take away who you are. It reveals who you were always meant to be. And maybe right now you are at the beginning of that journey. Maybe you are just starting to feel something stirring inside you. Something that you cannot fully explain. And that is okay. Because every transformation begins with a moment. A moment of awareness. A moment of honesty. A moment where you stop running and start listening. And maybe this is your moment. Maybe this is the moment where everything begins to change. Not because of something you do, but because of something you are willing to receive. Because the truth is you were never meant to carry everything on your own. You were never meant to figure everything out by yourself. You were never meant to live with that emptiness forever. And Jesus is the answer you have been searching for. Not in a way that takes away your questions, but in a way that gives them meaning. Not in a way that removes every struggle, but in a way that gives you strength to walk through them. Not in a way that changes everything instantly, but in a way that transforms everything deeply. And if you are willing, even just a little, even with doubt, even with uncertainty, you can begin that journey today. Not by doing something complicated. Not by becoming someone different overnight. But by simply opening your heart and saying, Jesus, I need you. And when you do that, something will begin. Something real. Something powerful. Something that will grow over time and change your life in ways you never imagined. Because the emptiness you feel is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of something greater. Something deeper. Something eternal. There are wounds that no one else can see. Wounds that do not appear on the surface. Wounds that do not leave visible scars but exist deep within the heart and the mind. And those are often the most painful ones. Because you carry them silently. You carry them through conversations. Through daily routines. Through moments where you are expected to be fine. And yet inside you feel like something is constantly breaking. And maybe you have learned to hide it so well that even the people closest to you have no idea what you are going through. Maybe you have become so used to pretending that you are okay that you almost believe it yourself. But late at night when everything becomes quiet and there are no distractions left, the truth begins to surface. The pain you tried to bury begins to rise again. The memories you tried to forget begin to return. The thoughts you tried to avoid become louder. And in those moments you realize that what you are dealing with is not something simple. Not something that time alone can fix. Not something that people can fully understand. Because it is deeper than words. It is deeper than logic. It is something that has taken root inside your soul. And maybe you have tried everything to heal it. You tried talking to people. You tried distracting yourself. You tried being stronger. You tried convincing yourself that it does not matter. But no matter what you do, the pain remains. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes loudly. But always there. And over time you begin to feel tired. Not just physically but emotionally. Spiritually. Deeply tired. Tired of carrying something you cannot put down. Tired of fighting something you cannot fully overcome. And maybe you have even started to wonder if this is just how your life will be. If this is something that will stay with you forever. If healing is even possible. And this is where many people lose hope. Because when pain lasts long enough it begins to feel permanent. It begins to feel like part of your identity. Like something that defines you. But what if that is not the truth? What if the pain you carry is not who you are, but something that happened to you? something that can be healed, something that can be restored. Because there is a kind of healing that goes beyond what the world can offer. A healing that does not just cover the pain but removes its power. A healing that does not erase your past but redeems it. And that healing is found in Jesus Christ. Because Jesus does not only care about what people can see. He cares about what is hidden. He cares about the parts of you that you do not show to anyone. The parts of you that feel broken, ashamed, or forgotten. And he does not turn away from those parts. He moves toward them. Because his love is not afraid of your pain. His presence is not overwhelmed by your brokenness. In fact, that is exactly where he begins. There was a man who lived for years with a deep sense of failure. Every mistake he had ever made replayed in his mind again and again. Every regret weighed on him like a burden he could not escape. And no matter how much he tried to move forward, he felt stuck in his past, trapped by his own thoughts. And eventually it led him into a place of darkness where he began to believe that his life had no value, that he had nothing left to offer. And one night, in complete desperation, with no plan, no expectation, he simply whispered, "Jesus, if you are real, I need help." And nothing extraordinary happened in that moment. No sudden light. No audible voice. But something inside him shifted. Something subtle but undeniable. And for the first time in a long time he felt a small sense of peace. Not a complete healing. Not a full transformation, but a beginning. And over the next days and weeks that small peace began to grow. The weight he carried began to feel lighter. The thoughts that once controlled him began to lose their power. And slowly he began to see himself differently. Not as a failure. Not as someone defined by his past. But as someone who was being restored. And that is how Jesus heals. Not always instantly. Not always in ways that are visible to others. But deeply, personally, in ways that reach the core of who you are. And maybe you are waiting for healing to look like something dramatic. Something obvious. Something that happens all at once. But often healing begins quietly. It begins in small moments. Small changes. Small shifts that you almost miss if you are not paying attention. Like the moment you realize that the pain is not as heavy as it used to be. Like the moment you realize that you can breathe a little easier. Like the moment you realize that hope is starting to return. And those moments may seem small. But they are not. They are evidence that something is happening. That something is changing. That something greater than you is at work within you. And if you are listening to this right now and you are carrying something that no one else sees, something that no one else understands, I want you to know that you do not have to carry it alone anymore. Because Jesus sees it. He understands it. And he is able to heal it. Not by force. Not by pressure. But by invitation. By gently calling you to bring everything to him. Your pain. Your fear. Your past. Your doubts. Everything. And maybe it feels difficult to do that. Maybe it feels uncomfortable. Maybe you are not even sure how to begin. But it does not have to be complicated. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to be real. It can be as simple as saying, "Jesus, I am tired. I cannot carry this anymore. I need you." And that moment of honesty, that moment of surrender, can be the beginning of something new. Something that will not only heal your pain but transform your life. Because when Jesus heals, he does not just remove what is broken. He replaces it with something greater. With peace. With purpose. With a sense of identity that is no longer based on your past but on his love. And that is the kind of healing that lasts. The kind of healing that changes everything from the inside out. And maybe this is your moment. Maybe this is the moment where you stop trying to handle everything on your own and you finally allow him to step in. Because you were never meant to carry it alone. And you were never meant to stay broken. And healing is not just possible. It is available to you right now. If you are willing to receive it, there are people who will tell you that miracles no longer happen. That what we read in the past was only for another time. That today everything has an explanation and nothing truly supernatural exists anymore. But the truth is miracles have never stopped. They have simply become quieter, deeper, and often hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. Because not every miracle comes with a dramatic sign. Not every miracle looks like something that shocks the world. Sometimes the greatest miracles happen inside a human heart where no one else can see. And yet they are just as real, just as powerful, just as undeniable. There was a man who spent years trapped in addiction. His life slowly falling apart. Relationships broken. Purpose lost. Identity shattered. And no matter how many times he tried to change, he always returned to the same place. The same darkness. The same cycle. And over time he stopped believing that change was possible. He stopped believing that his life could be different. Until one night when everything became too heavy. When he reached a point where he could not continue living the way he had been. And in that moment of complete desperation he cried out, not with a perfect prayer but with a broken voice. Jesus, if you are real, help me because I cannot help myself. And there was no immediate explosion of change. No instant transformation that everyone could see. But something happened that he could not explain. Something inside him shifted. The desire that once controlled him began to weaken. The voice that once pulled him into darkness began to lose its power. And over the following days something new began to grow within him. A strength that did not come from himself. A clarity that he had never experienced before. And slowly, step by step, his life began to change. Habits broke. Relationships began to restore. Purpose returned. And people around him could not understand how it happened because they knew how deep he had been. They knew how impossible it seemed. But what they were witnessing was not just recovery. It was transformation. And that is what a miracle truly is. Not just something that changes your situation but something that changes you. There was also a young woman who lived with anxiety so intense that it controlled every part of her life. She could not sleep peacefully. She could not feel safe even in calm situations. Her mind constantly filled with fear, worst-case scenarios, and thoughts that she could not escape. And she tried everything to manage it. She tried to control it, to understand it, to fight it. But nothing worked. And one day, in a moment of exhaustion, she simply sat in silence and whispered, Jesus, I need peace. And again nothing dramatic happened in that exact moment. But later that night, for the first time in years, she felt a stillness inside her mind. A quietness that she had not known before. And over time that peace began to grow. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But steadily, replacing fear with something new. Something stronger. Something that did not come from her own effort. And she realized that what she was experiencing was not just emotional relief. It was healing. And these stories are not rare. They are happening every day. People finding freedom from things that once controlled them. People finding hope in places where there was none. People finding light in the middle of darkness. And maybe you hear these stories and part of you wonders if they could be true for you. Maybe part of you wants to believe but another part holds back. Questioning. Doubting. Unsure. And that is okay. Because even faith begins in uncertainty. But what if instead of focusing on what you do not understand, you simply consider the possibility that something greater is real? That something beyond what you can see is at work? Because the truth is, miracles are not about proving something to your mind. They are about transforming your life. And maybe the miracle you are waiting for is not something external but something internal. Maybe it is not about changing your circumstances immediately but about changing your heart. Your perspective. Your identity. Because when that changes, everything else begins to follow. And if you look closely at your own life, there may already be signs that something is happening. Maybe you are still here when you thought you would not make it. Maybe you are still searching when you could have given up. Maybe you are still listening to something like this right now when you could have turned away. And those things may seem small, but they are not. They are evidence that something is still alive within you. Something that has not given up. Something that is still reaching. And that is often where miracles begin. Not in perfection but in persistence. Not in certainty but in openness. And maybe right now you are closer than you think. Maybe you are at the edge of something new. Something real. Something that could change everything. Not all at once but deeply over time. And the invitation is simple. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to become someone else overnight. You just need to be willing. Willing to open your heart. Willing to ask. Willing to say, Jesus, if you are real, show me. Help me. Change me. And that simple moment of honesty could become the turning point of your life. Because miracles are not just events. They are encounters. Encounters with a living God who still moves. Still heals. Still restores. And still reaches into the lives of people who are willing to respond. And maybe this is your moment. Not by accident. Not randomly. But intentionally. Because something is calling you. Something is reaching for you. And all you have to do is respond. There is a reason why so many people feel like they cannot come to God. A reason why they feel distant. Unworthy. Or unsure if they would even be accepted. Because somewhere along the way they began to believe that they had to change first. That they had to fix themselves. That they had to become better before they could approach Him. And that belief has kept countless people away. Not because God is distant. But because they feel like they are not enough. And maybe you have felt that too. Maybe you have looked at your life. Your mistakes. Your past. And thought that you were too far gone. Too broken. Too flawed to be accepted. Maybe you have believed that God is only for certain people. People who have their lives together. People who are good. People who are strong. But the truth is completely different. Because Jesus does not wait for you to become perfect. He comes to you exactly where you are. In your mess. In your confusion. In your weakness. And that is what makes His love different from anything else in this world. Because human love often depends on conditions. On expectations. On performance. But His love does not change based on how well you are doing. It does not increase when you succeed or decrease when you fail. It remains constant. Steady. Unchanging. And there was a young man who spent years believing that he had ruined his life. That his choices had taken him too far. That there was no way back. And because of that belief he kept running. Running from God. Running from himself. Running from anything that reminded him of what he had become. But the more he ran, the more empty he felt. The more lost he became. Until one day he reached a point where he could not run anymore. When the weight of everything he had been carrying became too much. And in that moment he did something he had not done in years. He stopped. And in that stillness he spoke honestly. Not with perfect words. Not with confidence. But with truth. Jesus, if you still want me, I am here. And what he expected was rejection. Silence. Or nothing at all. But what he experienced was something completely different. A sense of peace that he had not felt in years. A feeling of being accepted. Not for who he pretended to be. But for who he really was. Broken. Flawed. Imperfect. And that moment changed everything. Not because his life suddenly became perfect. But because he realized that he was not alone anymore. That he did not have to carry everything by himself. That there was someone who saw him fully and still chose to love him. And that realization began to transform him from the inside out. And that is what happens when you encounter Jesus. He does not demand that you fix everything first. He does not ask you to clean yourself up before coming to him. He invites you to come as you are. Because he is the one who brings the change. He is the one who restores. He is the one who transforms. And maybe you are still holding back. Maybe you feel like you are not ready. Like you need to figure things out first. Like you need to become better before you can take that step. But the truth is you will never reach a point where you feel completely ready. Because coming to Jesus is not about being ready. It is about being willing. Willing to open your heart. Willing to be honest. Willing to let go of the idea that you have to do everything on your own. And maybe that is the hardest part. Letting go of control. Letting go of the belief that you have to fix yourself. Because for so long you have relied on your own strength. Your own understanding. Your own efforts. But what if you were never meant to do it alone? What if the reason you feel exhausted is because you have been carrying something that was never yours to carry? And what if the moment you release it, the moment you surrender it, is the moment everything begins to change? Because Jesus is not waiting on the other side of perfection. He is standing right where you are. In your current reality. In your present moment. In your unfinished story. And he is inviting you into something new. Something deeper. Something real. And that invitation is not based on your past. It is not limited by your mistakes. It is not restricted by your doubts. It is open. Right now. Exactly as you are. And maybe all it takes is one step. Not a big step. Not a perfect step. Just a small one. Just a moment where you stop running and start turning. Where you stop hiding and start opening. Where you stop pretending and start being real. And that moment, that simple honest moment, can become the beginning of something you never expected. Because when you come to Jesus as you are, you begin a journey where you are slowly changed into who you were always meant to be. Not by force. Not by pressure. But by love. By grace. By a presence that does not leave you the same. And maybe this is your moment. Not by accident. Not randomly. But intentionally. Because something inside you is ready. Something inside you is responding. Something inside you is saying that there is more. That there is something real waiting for you. And you do not have to understand everything to take that step. You just have to be willing. Willing to say, Jesus, here I am. And when you do, you will begin to experience something that cannot be explained with logic alone. Something that must be lived. Something that must be felt. Something that will change you in ways that go beyond what you ever thought was possible. Because his love does not meet you at your best. It meets you at your real. And from there everything begins. There is something about faith that many people misunderstand. They think faith means having everything figured out. Having no doubts. Being completely sure about everything. But that is not what true faith is. Faith is not certainty in yourself. It is trust in something greater than you even when you do not fully understand. It is choosing to believe even when you cannot see the outcome. It is taking a step forward even when the path is unclear. And that kind of faith does not come from strength. It comes from surrender. It comes from recognizing that you do not have all the answers. That you cannot control everything. That you need something beyond yourself. And maybe that is where you are right now. Standing at a place where you feel unsure. Where you feel like you do not know what to believe. Where you feel like you are caught between wanting to trust and being afraid to hope. Because hope can be dangerous when you have been disappointed before. When you have tried and failed. When you have believed and been let down. And so part of you holds back. Part of you protects itself. Part of you says, what if this does not work? What if nothing changes? What if I try again and I end up in the same place? And those thoughts are real. They are honest. They are human. But they are not the end of the story. Because faith does not ignore doubt. It moves forward in the middle of it. It says, I do not understand everything, but I am willing to take a step. And sometimes that step is small. So small that it almost feels insignificant. Like a quiet thought. Like a simple question. Like a whispered prayer. But those small steps matter more than you think. Because they open the door for something greater to enter your life. There was a woman who lived in constant fear. Fear that controlled her decisions. Fear that limited her life. Fear that told her she was not safe. Not capable. Not enough. And she tried to fight it. She tried to control it. She tried to think her way out of it. But nothing worked. And over time she became exhausted. Tired of living in a constant state of anxiety. Tired of feeling trapped inside her own mind. And one day she reached a point where she realized she could not keep living like that. And in that moment she made a simple decision. Not a big dramatic one. Just a small step of faith. She prayed. Not because she was sure it would work. But because she had nothing else left. She said, Jesus, I do not even know if I fully believe. But I need help. And that was it. No long speech. No perfect words. Just honesty. And at first nothing seemed to change. Her situation remained the same. Her life looked the same. But inside something began to shift. Slowly. Quietly. Almost unnoticed at first. The fear that once felt overwhelming began to loosen its grip. The thoughts that once controlled her began to lose their intensity. And moments of peace started to appear. Small moments. Brief moments. But real moments. And over time those moments grew. And what she experienced was not just emotional relief. It was transformation. It was something deeper than anything she had tried before. And that is what faith does. It creates space for God to move. Not because you are strong. But because you are willing. And maybe you are waiting to feel ready before you take that step. Maybe you are waiting to have everything figured out before you believe. But if you wait for certainty, you may never move. Because faith does not come after everything is clear. It comes before. It comes in the middle of uncertainty. In the middle of questions. In the middle of doubt. And it grows as you continue to move forward. Step by step. Moment by moment. And maybe the step you need to take right now is not as big as you think. Maybe it is not about changing your entire life overnight. Maybe it is just about opening your heart a little. Just enough to say I am willing. Just enough to say I am open. Just enough to say Jesus, if you are real, I want to know you. And that small opening can lead to something much greater. Because when you take even the smallest step of faith, you are no longer standing still. You are moving. And when you move, things begin to change. Not always instantly. Not always in ways you can immediately see. But deeply. Gradually. In ways that shape your life over time. And as you continue to take those steps, as you continue to trust even when you do not understand, you begin to experience something new. A sense of peace that is not dependent on your circumstances. A sense of direction that is not limited by your current situation. A sense of purpose that goes beyond what you can see. And that is the power of faith. It does not remove every challenge. It does not eliminate every struggle. But it gives you something stronger than those things. It gives you a foundation. Something steady. Something unshakable. Something that holds you even when everything else feels uncertain. And maybe that is what you have been missing. Not the absence of problems. But the presence of something greater. Something that gives you strength in the middle of your struggles. Something that gives you hope when everything feels unclear. Something that reminds you that you are not alone. And if you are listening to this right now, maybe this is your moment to take that step. Not a perfect step. Not a fearless step. Just a real one. Just a step that says I am willing to trust even if I do not fully understand. I am willing to believe even if I still have questions. I am willing to open my heart even if I feel uncertain. And that step, that simple decision, can change everything. Because faith is not about having everything. It is about trusting the one who does. And when you place your faith in Jesus, you are not trusting blindly. You are responding to a presence that is already reaching for you, already calling you, already inviting you into something greater. And all you have to do is say yes. Even if it is a quiet yes. Even if it is a hesitant yes. Even if it is just the beginning. Because every transformation starts somewhere. And maybe this is where yours begins. There comes a moment when what you have experienced is no longer meant to stay only with you. A moment when what has begun to change inside you is not just for your own life but for others as well. Because what Jesus does in a person is never meant to be hidden. It is meant to be shared. It is meant to spread. It is meant to reach beyond one heart into many. And maybe you do not feel like someone who could share anything. Maybe you feel like you are still figuring things out. Still in the process. Still not perfect. But that is exactly the kind of person God uses. Not those who have everything together. But those who have been touched. Those who have experienced something real. Those who have felt the change. Because people are not looking for perfection. They are looking for something authentic. Something honest. Something that speaks to the reality of what they are going through. And right now there are millions of people around the world who feel exactly the way you once felt. Empty. Lost. Confused. Searching for something they cannot fully explain. Trying to fill a space that nothing seems to satisfy. And they are looking. Whether they realize it or not. They are searching for truth. For hope. For something real. And maybe you have become part of that answer. Not because you have all the knowledge. Not because you have all the right words. But because you have experienced something. Something that has begun to change you. Something that has given you a glimpse of peace. A glimpse of hope. A glimpse of something beyond what the world can offer. And your story, no matter how simple it may seem to you, could be the very thing that reaches someone else. Because when people hear real stories, when they see real change, when they encounter something genuine, it breaks through the walls that logic alone cannot reach. It touches something deeper. Something inside them that recognizes truth. And maybe that is why you are here. Maybe that is why you have been listening. Maybe that is why something inside you has been responding. Because this is not just about you. It is about what can flow through you to others. It is about being part of something bigger. Something that reaches beyond borders. Beyond languages. Beyond cultures. Because the message of Jesus is not limited to one place. It is not restricted to one group of people. It is for everyone. For every person who feels broken. For every person who feels lost. For every person who is searching for something real. And in a world that is filled with noise. With distractions. With temporary solutions. This message stands out because it is not temporary. It is not shallow. It is not something that fades. It is something eternal. Something that goes deeper than anything else. And you do not need to stand on a stage to share it. You do not need to have a large audience. You do not need to be someone special in the eyes of the world. You just need to be willing. Willing to speak. Willing to share. Willing to let what has touched your life reach someone else. Because even one conversation can change your life. Even one message can reach your heart. Even one moment of honesty can open a door that someone else has been waiting for. And maybe you have already felt that. Maybe you have already sensed that there is something inside you that wants to be expressed. Something that wants to be shared. But at the same time you feel hesitant. You feel unsure. You wonder if you are the right person. If you know enough. If you can do it. And those thoughts are natural. But they are not what defines your ability to make an impact. Because this is not about your strength. It is about His. It is not about your perfection. It is about His presence in your life. And when you begin to understand that, something shifts. Something changes. Because you realize that you do not have to carry the responsibility of changing people. You are simply there to share what is real. And let God do the rest. And that takes away the pressure. That removes the fear. That allows you to step forward in a way that is natural. In a way that is authentic. In a way that is true to who you are. And maybe that is where it begins. Not with something big. Not with something overwhelming. But with something simple. Something real. Something honest. Sharing your story. Sharing what you have experienced. Sharing how things have begun to change. Even if it is still in progress. Because your journey does not have to be complete to be meaningful. It just has to be real. And when you begin to share, when you begin to open up, you will start to see that your words, your experience, your honesty can reach people in ways you never expected. Because there are people who will hear your story and recognize themselves in it. People who will feel understood. People who will feel seen. People who will realize that they are not alone. And that realization can be the first step in their own journey. The first step towards something new. Something deeper. Something real. And that is how this message spreads. Not through force. Not through pressure. But through connection. Through authenticity. Through truth. And maybe this is your moment to step into that. To realize that what you have received is not meant to stay hidden. It is meant to be shared. Not in a way that feels forced. But in a way that flows naturally from what you have experienced. Because when something is real, it cannot stay contained. It moves. It spreads. It reaches. And you become part of that movement. Part of something that is not limited by your own life but extends into the lives of others. And maybe you will never fully see the impact of what you share. Maybe you will never know how far it reaches. But that does not make it any less real. Because every life that is touched, every heart that is opened, every person who begins to see things differently, is part of something greater than any one of us. And you have a place in that. You have a role in that. Simply by being willing. By being open. By being real. And maybe all it takes is one step. One moment where you decide not to keep everything inside anymore. But to let it out. To let it flow. To let it reach someone else. And that moment could change more than you realize. Not just for others. But for you as well. Because when you begin to share what you have experienced, you also begin to grow. To deepen. To understand more. To see more clearly. And your own journey becomes stronger. More grounded. More real. And that is the beauty of it. It is not just about giving. It is also about becoming. Becoming more aware. More connected. More alive in what you have found. And maybe this is where everything begins to expand. Beyond just your own life. Into something that touches the world. One person at a time. There are moments in life that define everything. Moments that may seem small on the outside but carry a weight that changes the direction of your entire future. Moments where you are faced with a choice. Not a loud or dramatic one. But a quiet internal decision. A moment where something inside you knows that you cannot keep going the same way. That something has to change. And maybe this is that moment for you right now. Maybe this is not just another message. Not just another video. Not just another passing thought. But something deeper. Something that is speaking directly to your heart. Something that is calling you to respond. Because there comes a point where you cannot stay where you are and become who you were meant to be at the same time. There comes a point where holding on to the old begins to cost you more than letting go. Where continuing in the same patterns begins to feel heavier than stepping into something new. And yet even when you feel that, even when you know that something needs to change, there is still a part of you that hesitates. A part of you that is afraid. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of letting go. Afraid of what it might mean to truly step into something different. And that fear is real. Because change always requires a kind of surrender. A kind of trust. A willingness to step forward without seeing the full picture. And maybe you have been standing in that place for a long time. Feeling the pull to move forward but also feeling the weight that holds you back. Caught between what you know and what you feel. Between what is familiar and what is possible. And this is where the call becomes clear. Not as pressure. Not as force. But as an invitation. A gentle but persistent voice that says there is more. There is something beyond what you have been living. Something beyond the patterns. Beyond the emptiness. Beyond the cycles that keep repeating. And that voice does not condemn you for where you have been. It does not shame you for your past. It does not reject you for your mistakes. It calls you forward. It calls you into something new. Something that you may not fully understand but can begin to feel. And maybe that is why you cannot ignore this moment. Maybe that is why something inside you keeps listening. Keeps paying attention. Because this is not random. This is not accidental. This is a moment of opportunity. A moment where everything can begin to shift. Not because everything around you suddenly changes. But because something inside you makes a decision. A decision to turn. A decision to respond. A decision to stop running and start moving towards something greater. And turning back is not about becoming perfect. It is not about fixing everything in one moment. It is about direction. It is about choosing to move towards something different. Choosing to step away from what has been holding you back and step into what is calling you forward. And that choice does not have to be complicated. It does not have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as a decision in your heart. A quiet moment where you say, I cannot keep living this way. I want something real. I want something different. I am ready to take a step. And that step may feel small. It may feel uncertain. But it is powerful. Because it marks the beginning of a new direction. And every step after that builds on the one before it. And over time what once felt impossible begins to feel real. What once felt distant begins to come closer. And what once felt unclear begins to take shape. And maybe right now you are closer than you realize. Closer to a decision. Closer to a turning point. Closer to something that could change everything. And all it takes is a response. Not a perfect response. Not a fearless response. Just an honest one. Just a moment where you say yes. Even if it is a quiet yes. Even if it is a hesitant yes. Even if it is a yes filled with questions. Because that yes opens the door. That yes creates space. That yes allows something new to begin. And maybe you have been waiting for a sign. Something undeniable. Something that removes all doubt. But sometimes the moment itself is the sign. The fact that you are here. The fact that you are listening. The fact that something inside you is responding. That is already something. That is already movement. And what you do with that moment matters. Because moments like this do not stay forever. They come and they pass. And the question is not whether the opportunity is there. The question is whether you will respond to it. Whether you will step into it. Whether you will allow it to lead you into something greater. And maybe this is your moment to stop waiting. To stop delaying. To stop telling yourself that you will do it later. That you will think about it another time. Because deep down you know that something is happening right now. Something is shifting. Something is calling you. And you have a choice. To ignore it or to respond to it. To stay where you are or to move forward. To hold on or to let go. And that choice, even though it feels small, carries more power than you realize. Because it is the beginning of everything that comes next. And if you choose to respond, if you choose to turn, if you choose to take that step, you will begin to see that what once felt impossible is not impossible. What once felt out of reach is not out of reach. Because you are not walking alone. You are stepping into something that is already reaching for you. Something that has been waiting for you. Something that has never left you. And that is the invitation. Not to perfection. Not to pressure. But to something real. Something that begins with a simple decision. A simple turning. A simple yes. There are moments in life that feel ordinary on the surface but carry a depth that cannot be seen. Moments that pass quietly but hold the potential to change everything. And this is one of those moments. Not because of the words themselves but because of what is happening inside you right now. Because something has been building. Something has been stirring. Something has been moving beneath the surface of your thoughts and your emotions. And maybe you have felt it through every part of this journey. Through every word. Through every story. Through every moment where something inside you paused and listened. And now you are here. At a place where everything comes together. A place where what you have heard is no longer just something to think about but something to respond to. Because there comes a point where listening is no longer enough. Where understanding is no longer enough. Where something deeper is required. Something personal. Something real. Something that moves from your mind into your heart. And that is where this moment begins. Because this is not about information. It is not about knowledge. It is about encounter. It is about a response to something that has been reaching for you from the very beginning. And maybe you do not fully understand it. Maybe you cannot explain it. But you can feel it. You can sense that something is different. Something is real. Something is calling you. And that call is not one of pressure. It is not one of fear. It is not one of obligation. It is an invitation. A simple but powerful invitation to step into something new. Something that goes beyond everything you have known before. Something that does not depend on your strength, your past, or your understanding, but on your willingness to respond. And the truth is you do not need to have everything figured out to take this step. You do not need to understand everything about God. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to clean up your life before coming. Because this invitation is not waiting for a better version of you. It is for you as you are right now. In this exact moment. With everything you carry. With every doubt. Every fear. Every question. Every part of your story. And that is what makes it so powerful. Because it means there is nothing stopping you except your response. Nothing holding you back except your decision. And maybe that is why this moment feels so significant. Because deep down you know that something is being placed in front of you. Not forcefully. Not aggressively. But clearly. And you have the freedom to choose. To respond or to walk away. To open your heart or to close it. To step forward or to stay where you are. And that choice, even though it may feel small, carries more weight than you realize. Because it is not just about this moment. It is about what this moment leads to. It is about what begins when you say yes. Because saying yes to Jesus is not just about a single decision. It is about the beginning of a relationship. A relationship that changes everything. Not by removing every problem instantly but by giving you something greater than those problems. By giving you a presence that walks with you. A peace that holds you. A truth that guides you. And a love that never leaves you. And maybe part of you is still hesitant. Still unsure. Still questioning. Wondering what it really means. Wondering if it is real. Wondering if it will last. And those thoughts are normal. But they do not have to stop you. Because this step is not about certainty. It is about openness. It is about saying I may not understand everything but I am willing to take a step. I am willing to open my heart. I am willing to respond. And sometimes that is all it takes for everything to begin. Because when you respond, when you say yes, something shifts. Something begins. Something that goes beyond what you can see in the moment. And that is why this invitation matters. Because it is not just about what happens now. It is about what happens next. It is about a life that begins to change from the inside out. A life where the emptiness you once felt begins to fade. Where the pain you once carried begins to heal. Where the confusion you once lived in begins to clear. And all of that starts with a simple response. A simple moment where you choose to open your heart and say yes. And maybe you are wondering what that looks like. Maybe you are asking yourself, how do I do that? What do I say? And the answer is simple. It does not have to be complicated. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to be real. It can be as simple as this. Jesus, I need you. I do not have everything figured out. I do not understand everything. But I am opening my heart to you. Come into my life. Heal me. Guide me. Change me. And if you say that, even quietly, even with doubt, even with uncertainty, something will begin. Something real. Something that will grow over time. Something that will shape your life in ways you cannot yet see. And that is the invitation. Not to religion. Not to rules. Not to pressure. But to a relationship. To something living. Something active. Something that meets you where you are and leads you into something greater. And maybe this is your moment. Maybe this is where everything begins. Not with perfection. Not with certainty. But with a simple yes. A simple response. A simple decision that opens the door to a life that is no longer empty. No longer lost. No longer without direction. But filled with something real. Something lasting. Something eternal. And you do not have to wait. You do not have to delay. You do not have to tell yourself that you will think about it later. Because this moment is here now. This opportunity is here now. And all that remains is your response. Your decision. Your yes. And that yes, no matter how small it may seem, can change everything.